The Pearce family were getting to know their newest member this morning, along with one of the police officers who helped at the birth, Constable Neil Davies. Proud father Bob Pearce said the drama began early today when wife Mercy woke up with labour pains.
About 5 to 1 we started to take off, and we got about a couple of hundred yards past the Dawson lights, and we saw the guys driving up in front of us. So I was honking the horn and putting on the flash in my high boom, so they stopped and they said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Well, I think my wife's delivering a baby." So I said, they said, "Follow us." I said, "Well, I hope I can keep up with you."
The Mercy Dash ended here, just a few hundred metres from Belmont Hospital, when Constable Davies and Sergeant Bruce Christensen were suddenly called upon to act as midwives.
I couldn't believe it. I'm still stunned. I mean, I was there. When Bob first pulled us over and he said, "Now my wife's having a baby," I think I said something like, "When?" And Bob said, "Now." And from there on, it's just unbelievable.
So, Neil, did you actually have to play a part in the delivery?
Well, Bob did the majority of it. I was sort of the second pair of hands that helped support the baby. As you just said, we worked well as a team. It was sort of standing there and actually helping to support the baby and helping to remove the cord from the baby's neck because she was wrapped up pretty tight in the cord. It was just, like I said, it was a team effort, a big team effort.
At last report, baby Chelsea Jade was doing well. The grateful parents couldn't call their little girl Neil or Bruce, but they have invited Neil Davies to be godfather at the christening. It's a role he's only too happy to accept. All councils in New South Wales go to the polls in September next year. The Labor Party branches in Newcastle endorse a candidate for the job of mayor, which then goes to a popular vote. Alderman John McNaughton won pre-selection for the job after council was reinstated following its controversial sacking. But in a move bound to cause division within Labor's rank and file, the Lord Mayor is facing a challenger for pre-selection.
It's so unusual for a sitting member, someone who has a position, to be opposed, that's why I said I was surprised.
The man chasing Alderman McNaughton's job is 45-year-old university lecturer Greg Hees. He has degrees in town planning and social welfare and is president of the party's municipal committee. While choosing not to comment on the pre-selection battle, Mr Hees confirmed that he had begun lobbying key branches for support. The Lord Mayor won't be far behind him.
I'll be doing what I normally do in a pre-selection campaign, going and seeing the voters, telling them where I stand and seeking their support.
Are you confident of winning that support?
Yes, I am. I'm sure I can win the support of a majority of them.
The Lord Mayor says there have always been factions within the local party branches who have opposed him. He says he will not run as an independent if he loses the party's endorsement. Whether this rift develops into a bloody battle amongst the Labor Party branches is yet to be seen. One thing is certain, the campaign from both candidates will be short but intense. Pre-selection has to be finalised by November the 3rd. John Church, NBN News.
"24-year-old Philip Gascoigne was killed on Saturday during demolition of this wall at the Junction School. He was buried this morning after a service at Hamilton. Last night, however, his family had to prevent repossessors from taking his sports car.
And they told me that he was behind in the payments, and I said, yeah, well, reasonable enough, but could you understand our circumstances? He's only just died, and that we have already organised for the car to go in the funeral procession, and that if you could just drive past and ring your boss and say, look, it wasn't there tonight, we'll go back and check again tomorrow.
I haven't got much left of my son, but he loved his car, and there was no way they were taking his car. No way.
Expecting trouble, around 6 police officers were called to the scene. The family notified local news media, including NBN. However, police attempted to prevent the incident being recorded. Family and friends of Philip climbed onto the car to stop repossession agents towing it away. The family said they wanted the car to be used in the funeral procession. According to Philip's mother, Marie Fisher, no one from Ford Credit approached the family.
I asked them at least a dozen times who was the representative from Ford Credit. Could you please state how much is owing? And no one would speak.
Ford Credit refused to comment today. However, it is known that agents acting for the company were unaware Philip had died when they first arrived to take the car. After much negotiation, it was decided to let the family keep the vehicle until tomorrow. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
Stop work meetings, all linked by satellite, were held throughout the state this morning. Newcastle and Hamilton TAFE teachers were almost unanimous in their support for a strike, with a show of 165 hands and only one abstention. This was typical of the feeling statewide.
That's a sign to the employer, I think, to the state government, that TAFE teachers really will resist this continuing attack on them.
The TAFE Teachers Association has battled in vain for the past 18 months to receive the same increases as school teachers, who now receive $100 a week more than their TAFE colleagues.
It is actually a reduction in salary in that they're requiring us to work a great many more contact hours for a relatively small increase in salary. Teachers will not wear that.
Already 9 teachers have resigned from Newcastle TAFE so far this year, and teachers say morale is at an all-time low.
And statewide, the resignation rate is absolutely unprecedented. Of all resignations in the past 10 years, 36% of those have occurred over the past 18 months. There's an enormous hemorrhaging in the system. We're afraid that if the government manages to impose these new conditions on us, that this hemorrhage will lead to the destruction of TAFE as we know it. That's something we can't afford as a community.
But next Tuesday and Wednesday's strike, the third during the dispute, could be called off at the 11th hour if it threatens the union's hearing in the Industrial Commission. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
It seems nobody wants the water board in their backyard. After an emotional campaign by Dungog farmers last year, the Tillagra Dam was put on hold for at least 30 years. Now Paterson River farmers are in the fight.
The water board has made it quite clear that it is interested in security for Newcastle water users rather than for farmers.
At a progress report on plans for future water supplies, a review board stated the Paterson River, with releases from the Lostock Dam, could augment Newcastle's needs. A movable weir is planned for Goswick on the Paterson, where water could be pumped through to the Williams, then on to Grahamstown. Paterson farmers fear a cutback in the river's flow would increase salt density and threaten their livelihoods.
In the lower part of the Paterson, if you get any further increase in salinity, what you effectively do is you put all the alluvial country below the weir site out of agricultural production.
Now, that serious?
It's that serious.
It's difficult to know just what the effects are downstream on salinity, and the Department of Water Resources is going to do some more studies to determine the ultimate effects.
Waterboard Chief Paul Broad says only detailed scientific surveys can find the correct answers. But Mr Broad says the Hunter must have more water for predicted needs at the turn of the century. And the Paterson River proposal offered the most cost-efficient and least socially damaging proposal.
We need a water supply. It's much better to use existing ones than to go building new ones over Tillaga or Johnson's Creek. We've got to keep in mind that what we're talking about is using an existing resource opposed to building a big major one, which would not only sort of affect the farms on a day-to-day basis, it would mean actually flooding the properties. And the social costs are huge.
In the past, McDonald's ties with the Knights have been minimal. While fans often feasted at its Broadmeadow restaurant adjacent to the ASC before and after games, the chain's only visible presence during the season was in the shape of a low-key grandstand sign. But today that all changed with the announcement of a 3-year $200,000 sponsorship deal on behalf of the Hunters' 7 licensees.
The people who come here to the football games every week are the same people who come through our restaurants every week. And that's where we get the good feeling about what the Knights are doing for the people of the Hunter. We talk to our customers every day. And the main subject that comes up when people want to talk about something positive is the Knights. And that's why we want to be part of it.
Today, the Knights' new Guernseys were modelled, emblazoned with the trademarks of the 1991 sponsors. The club is only the second ever sporting person or body to snare McDonald sponsorship, the first being golfer Greg Norman. It will return the favour by throwing its weight behind the fundraising campaign for the Ronald McDonald House being built at Rankin Park.
Firefighters were called to the library block of the high school just before 6 o'clock by a cleaner who saw smoke billowing from a ground floor window. Although the fire was extinguished in minutes, smoke and heat caused extensive damage to the room. Firefighters soon realised that a second blaze had been lit on the first floor. It's understood that outbreak smothered itself, but not before the room was coated in soot. Police have no doubt the fires were deliberately lit. They're working on a possible connection between this incident and another fire set in the Gateshead Infants Canteen last week. On each occasion, the fire started in screwed-up paper. This latest incident is considered especially serious. If the fire had caught hold, it may have destroyed the school's adjoining library, causing not only enormous expense but incalculable loss to teaching facilities. Police inquiries are continuing. The second raid was a carefully planned operation. Police in marked and unmarked vehicles staked out key roads leading into the suburb of Gateshead. Residents had little idea of their presence until they converged in force around a lone vehicle on Kadaga Road. Police left nothing to chance, bustling a suspect into the back seat of a car within minutes of the raid. After a search of the vehicle, it too was taken from the scene for further examination at Newcastle Police Station. It's understood 2 people travelling with the arrested man were questioned and taken to another address on nearby Bean Street. Police left there a short time later. The raid was the second today in connection with an armed hold-up at Wickham earlier this month. Victims at the Vista Electronics shop told police they were held up at gunpoint and were then bound and hooded, while the assailants collected a quantity of cash, electronic goods and 4 rifles. A 30-year-old unemployed man from Maryville appeared in Newcastle local court this evening charged with armed hold-up. The second man, arrested at Gateshead, is still being questioned by police. Inquiries are continuing.
Judy McQueenie's work in watercolour and photography reflects a 40-year interest in the preservation of Lake Macquarie, where she lives. Pamela Johnston of Waratah developed a keen awareness of conservation through bushwalking in both Australia and the Himalayas of Nepal. Today their work was recognised by Minister for the Environment Tim Moore when he presented them with cheques for $1,000 each. They are the 7th winners of the annual scholarship for graduate art students at the University of Newcastle. A different form of personal expression also went on show at the university today, a photographic exhibition by 30 students called Myth in Parts. It's the result of 7 months' work and explores a variety of myths that have surrounded the city since the earthquake. It is the first of a series of exhibitions to be mounted by students. After 3 weeks at the main art building, it will tour Sydney and interstate.
750 Knights supporters will forego winter woolies, blue and red scarves, jumpers and flags for ball gowns and black ties for the third Crusade ball. Final preparations were made this afternoon with a multitude of balloons complementing the table decorations, and the stage was jam-packed with equipment ready for the Alan Ward Big Band to spring into life. The previous balls have been just that, with guests ready and willing to congratulate the players on the season. Along with the festivities tonight, the annual presentation of trophies will take place, and among them the prestigious Player of the Year award. Robust centre Jeff Doyle is one of the early favourites. Doyle was a member of the train-on squad for the Kangaroo Tour and during the season scored 6 tries and was a success story. Another was rookie Ashley Gordon, who besides making the train-on squad, scored 15 tries, the equal leading 4-point scorer in the Winfield Cup this year. Lightning halfback Steve Fulmer had a huge season, capped off with a fabulous effort to run third in the Rothmans medal. A midget to most but a Goliath on the field, Fulmer must be one of the fancied few. Mark Lanford will start the favourite, and what a year he had. He made the lock position his own with powerhouse runs and thunderous defence, and to many was unlucky to miss the Kangaroo Tour. Also, Tony Butterfield and Mark Sargent come into calculation for their tremendous years, and as we know, Sarge is now reaping his rewards on the Kangaroo Tour, and Butts was another unlucky to miss the tour. Captain Michael Hagan has been the quiet achiever, Queensland State of Origin selection, and the man who dictated play for the Knights in 1990. Whoever is chosen as the Player of the Year will be a worthy winner, and 750 people will stand to applaud him tonight.
In what was supposed to be Year 12's muck-up night, windows were broken, lights smashed, graffiti sprayed around the school and a video and television stolen. Neighbours called police shortly after midnight when they heard shattering glass and yelling coming from the grounds. 24 people were detained by police, although some are Year 12 students, most are from outside the school. Police expect to lay charges later today.
Less than 24 hours after the Prime Minister signalled an easing of the government's hardline economic policy, Treasurer Paul Keating and the Reserve Bank are translating that into action. In twin statements, Mr Keating and the Reserve said interest rates would be brought down by 1% today to around 13%. Mr Keating said declining imports, lower asset prices and labour market easing enabled the government to make the move. Importantly, he also said the government was confident that banks would move quickly to reduce the interest rates they charge their retail customers. But Mr Keating did sound this note of caution.
That rate reductions now will have an impact on the intermediate term, not on the immediate term.
And the banks are being even more cautious, saying that any reduction in home loan interest rates probably won't take place for between 6 to 8 weeks.
Currently, the Hunter's medical research programs are scattered around the region. What's proposed is a modern facility adjoining the John Hunter Hospital to house them all. According to Professor Roger Smith of the Hunter Medical Research Cooperative, the centre, which will specialise in preventative and behavioural research, will draw expertise to the region.
Having a good research centre established next to our major teaching hospital will help us to attract the very best quality people to our region who will contribute to the research, but will also contribute in a major way to providing the healthcare of our region.
The federal government has $45 million to allocate to medical research projects. The Medical Research Cooperative requires $10 million to build the centre. This morning, the Hunter Parliamentary Task Force gave the proposal its backing, seeing it as a way for the federal government to redeem itself in the eyes of the Hunter community.
Under the circumstances of the federal government's treatment of Newcastle in recent years, I don't think it's unreasonable that they should give serious consideration to $10 million for such an institute for the Hunter Valley.
Also today, revelations about the shortage of therapy radiographers at the Mater Hospital at Waratah. 3 positions are available in the oncology unit, but the Hunter Area Health Service is having difficulty filling them. It's a case of technology outstripping human resources.
Since 1985, 2 linear accelerators have been brought online at the hospital, requiring an extra 14 radiographers to operate them. According to the Hunter Area Health Service, patients who can be cured of cancer by radiotherapy are not being adversely affected by the shortage. However, there are some who are being inconvenienced. Although a new course at Newcastle University will ease the problem in the future, the short-term outlook is not good. The Hunter Area Health Service will join Sydney hospitals in recruiting overseas, especially in Hong Kong, Holland and the United Kingdom. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
The study of Hunter Valley rural doctors shows they need a wider variety of skills than city-based GPs. Published in the Medical Journal of Australia, the report looked at 18 practitioners in Cessnock, Scone, Merriwa and Gloucester. It revealed the country-based doctor treats a patient with a potentially fatal condition about once every 2 weeks. The difference between city and country practitioners is that a rural doctor continues the treatment in hospital.
In most country towns, there are no resident medical officers, and as well as doing the normal GP work in the surgery, the country doctor also cares for the patient in the hospital, so that if, for example, a patient has a heart attack, the doctor won't only put them in the ambulance and send them to hospital, the doctor will then attend the patient at the hospital, do whatever resuscitation is necessary and follow through on that patient's care.
Only 25% of emergency calls are in normal working hours. Disturbed sleep treating patients in hospital or in the patient's home contributed to stress. And the doctors feel penalised by the isolation of their practice and the inability to get away and improve their training and skills.
Well, it's very difficult for them to get the time off to go and do all those things, and so the Rural Doctors Association has been trying to provide the education that the country doctors need.
More on the study into rural doctors on Newsnight tonight at 10:30. John Church, NBN News.